Hello and welcome back to my channel. In this video, you will see how I achieved the best performance of my Ryzen 5 5600X CPU without manually changing the CPU clock ratio or any voltages in BIOS, but rather letting the Precision Boost Overdrive, Curve Optimizer and Boost Clock Override features to handle the multipliers and voltages for me. My strategy is gradual and cumulative and consists on the following steps. Enable Precision Boost Overdrive and XMP. Set the PBO to advanced and select the motherboard limits. Enable Curve Optimizer on all cores with -30. Enable Boost Clock Override of 200 MHz. Set Curve Optimizer per core and decrease the curve value for the failing cores until all tests complete. Before anything else, let's see the hardware I will use moving forward. Along with the AMD Ryzen 5 5600X CPU, in this guide I will be using the Gigabyte B550 Aorus Pro V2 motherboard, a PowerColor RX 6700 XT GPU, two pairs of Crucial Ballistics DDR4 3600 memory sticks, a Gigabyte 750W gold power supply, and the NZXT Kraken X53 AIO. All of these are mounted inside the Be Quiet PureBase 500 computer case. A Ryzen 5000 CPU has multiple chiplets. A chiplet is a die with specific functions such as CPU cores, I/O hub, memory controller, and so on. All the chiplets communicate with each other via the Fabric Interconnect. A core chiplet die or CCD is one of the chips on the AMD CPU. On Zen 3, a CCD consists of a single core complex or CCX, which contain 8 individual cores, each with their L1 and L2 caches. These cores share a large 42 MB L3 cache. On the Ryzen 5 5600X, only 6 cores in the CCX are enabled. By default, the Infinity Fabric, memory controller and memory frequency will operate in synchronous mode up to 2000 MHz. Since I have DDR4 4600 memory, the free clocks will run synchronous at 1800 MHz. With all these things in mind, let's advance into benchmarking. This is the list of benchmarks I will use, starting with the shortest and ending with those having the longest duration. Blender benchmark, Corona benchmark, SuperPi, CPU Z bench, Cinebench R20, Geekbench, Passmark's CPU mark, Passmark's memory mark, 3D Mark TimeSpy, 3D Mark CPU profile, and Cinebench R23. I will also use the latest AMD Ryzen Master just to display settings made in BIOS. Now let's see how a system with both XMP and PBO disabled looks like. In BIOS, in easy mode, the DRAM runs at default frequencies. Switching to advanced mode, we can see in Tweaker tab both Precision Boost Overdrive and XMP profile being disabled. In Windows, the AMD Ryzen Master in basic view shows current control mode as default, and CPU Z in memory tab displays current DRAM speed. In the SPD tab, we can see all the profiles memory has been programmed with. In Ryzen Master, let's see the advanced view. In Homepage, on top, we can see useful information about the constraints under the CPU is running. The important ones are the PPT, TDC and EDC values. Control mode is default and Curve Optimizer is off. The cores section displays all CPU cores and also the fastest 2 cores in the core complex. In this CPU, Core 5 is the fastest and Core 4 is the second fastest. And these are the benchmarks results. Corona took 2 minutes to complete and the CPU reached 62 Celsius degrees. In 3D Mark TimeSpy, the CPU reached 62 Celsius degrees also. In 3D Mark CPU profile, the CPU reached 66 Celsius degrees during the 4 threads test. Before enabling Precision Boost Overdrive, let's see AMD's article on Precision Boost 2, as there are configuration steps to be taken care of in order to maximize the performance benefit from Precision Boost Overdrive. Have mounted a capable cooler, ensure good airflow inside the case, install the latest AMD chipset drivers, update the motherboard with the latest BIOS. I already have installed the latest AMD chipset drivers and I also have the latest BIOS version loaded. As video driver, I have installed the Adrenalin 22.5.1 WHQL version, as this one is the only driver with which the Heatfilm video editor is functioning properly. Now let's enable both XMP memory profile and Precision Boost Overdrive. Upon entering the BIOS, switch to Advanced mode and under the Tweaker tab, enter the Precision Boost Overdrive submenu. Change the Precision Boost Overdrive to Enabled, not Auto, as auto is the same as disabled. Next, set the extreme memory profile to profile 1, then save and exit the BIOS. In Windows, the Ryzen Master in basic view displays current control mode as Precision Boost Overdrive. Switching to advanced view in home page, we can see that the power and current limits have increased. PPT is now 720, TDC is 420, and EDC is 215. Control mode is PBO as expected. The memory tab of CPU-Z displays the increased memory frequency set by XMP profile. The power and current values displayed by Ryzen Master differ from one model of motherboard to another, depending on their power design. Before anything else, let's hear their official definition.
PPT is the socket power limit. It's measured in watts, and increasing socket power allows the CPU to use more in multi-threaded scenarios and can raise multi-thread performance. Where EDC is the peak current that the VRM configuration on the motherboard can provide you, and then the sustained is TDC, or thermal design current. So once you've been using those VRMs for a while and they've warmed up and you're saturating them, that's the sustained current.
And these are the benchmark results. Corona completed the rendering 5 seconds faster and the CPU reached 66 Celsius degrees. All 3D Mark TimeSpy scores are higher and the CPU reached 66.63 Celsius degrees. The 3D Mark CPU profile scores are better, peak frequency and max temperature being the same. Now let's set the PBO to advanced and select the motherboard limits. In BIOS, switch to advanced mode and navigate to the settings menu. Enter the AMD overclocking menu. Enter the Precision Boost Overdrive submenu. Change the Precision Boost Overdrive option to advanced and change the PBO limits option to motherboard. Then save and exit the BIOS. Let's see now the benchmarks results after this minor change. Somehow unexpected, the results are slightly better than previous, with very small increases and some decreases. In 3D Mark TimeSpy and 3D Mark CPU profile, we can spot an 8 MHz frequency increase with no temperature increase, so the change was worth it. And now let's add to the mix the Curve Optimizer feature. In BIOS, switch to advanced mode and navigate to the settings menu. Enter the AMD overclocking menu. Enter the Curve Optimizer submenu and change the option to all cores. Set sign to negative and magnitude to 30. Then save and exit the BIOS. In Windows, the Ryzen Master in basic view shows current control mode as PBO and current Curve Optimizer mode all cores. Switching to advanced view in home page, control mode is PBO and Curve Optimizer control is all cores minus 30 as expected. The benchmark results look much better this time. However, the scores of SuperPi, Memory Mark and 3D Mark TimeSpy graphics raise some warning signs as the extra performance comes with temperatures higher by 5 Celsius degrees. So probably not the best setting, but we will take care of this later. Are you still with me? Good, because now it's time to see which core will fail first, and for this we will enable Boost Clock Override and add another 200 MHz boost to the mix. This will raise the max ceiling of Ryzen 5 5600X from 4.65 GHz to 4.85 GHz for light workloads. In BIOS, switch to advanced mode and navigate to the settings menu. Enter the AMD overclocking submenu. Enter the CPU Boost Clock Override submenu and change the option to enabled positive. Next, set the max CPU Boost Clock Override to 200 MHz. Then save and exit the BIOS. In Windows, the AMD Ryzen Master in basic view shows now current control mode as Auto OC and current Curve Optimizer mode all cores. Switching to advanced view in home page, control mode is Auto Overclocking with the motherboard limits. Curve Optimizer control is minus 30 on all cores as expected. The results of completed benchmarks look better now, as the CPU had lower temperatures, higher frequencies and better scores overall. However, the 3D Mark CPU profile failed right at the first test. Let's see why by opening the event viewer. And it is in this custom view where we can see that the last processor core failed was the one with APIC ID 8. Opening the CPU-Z export save on my desktop, we can easily identify the ID 8 as belonging to Core 4. Core presented by the Ryzen Master as Core 05, the fastest core in the CCX. The custom view can be created in Event Viewer by defining a filter consisting of error and warning events, sourcing from WEA Logger, and saving it with a meaningful name. I made another 2 sets of tests with decreased boost clock override values, and on both, the Corona benchmark and Cinebench R20 loaded extremely slow. Besides that, the 3D Mark CPU profile kept failing due to same core, and I concluded this is leading nowhere. So the next move is to set Curve Optimizer control per core and decrease the curve magnitude for the failing core. In BIOS, switch to Advanced mode and navigate to the Settings menu. Enter the AMD overclocking menu. Enter the Curve Optimizer submenu and change the option to per core. Change the magnitude for the failing core to a slightly lower value. In this case, I change the magnitude of core 4 to -26. Then save and exit the BIOS. In Windows, the AMD Ryzen Master in Basic View shows current control mode as Auto OC and current Curve Optimizer mode per core. Switching to Advanced View, in Home page, control mode is Auto Overclocking with the motherboard limits. Curve Optimizer control is per core with the BIOS defined values. The new benchmark result is encouraging. The temperatures in 3D Mark TimeSpy and CPU profile were lower. However, Corona benchmark loaded again very slow, and the SuperPi score was a bit disturbing. Therefore, I decided to decrease the curve for core 3 to -28. I made the change in BIOS and ran the benchmarks, but at 3D Mark CPU profile, core 4 had another failure. Next, I decreased the curve for core 4 to -25 and ran the benchmarks, which completed successfully this time. However, both Corona benchmark and Cinebench R20 loaded again extremely slow. This was indication of an unbalanced configuration. At this point, I had an idea about the curve magnitude for core 3 and core 4, but since the configuration was unbalanced, I had to play around with curve magnitude for the remaining cores until all benchmark would start, complete and score overall better results. In this table, you can see the results of subsequent sets of stable benchmarks, leading to the final configuration A16. So allow me to order a bit these Auto OC results. A14 had the lowest results from all sets. Curve Optimizer was set to -15 on the 2 fastest cores and to -25 for the others. At A8 I tried the -24 magnitude on all cores and obtained somehow better results. At A9 I tried the -25 magnitude on all cores. Single core performance was a bit better, but SuperPi had the weakest result. At A10, multi-core performance was better than previous, but 3D Mark graphics score took a hit. In A11, the 3D Mark graphics score recovered and Geekbench multi-core result was the best. A15 showed overall better results, but SuperPi took a small hit. And finally, at A16, I obtained all the way better results with higher scores in Corona benchmark, SuperPi, 3D Mark TimeSpy score, and Cinebench R23 multi-core. As you could see, Ryzen overclocking is more of a marathon than a sprint. It's not that easy to find the optimal curve combination for your CPU, and trying all combinations on a 16-core Ryzen 9 would take you probably weeks. Well, you can use in your marathon the information provided by HardwareInfo64 by looking at the maximum values reached by all cores and threads after all benchmarks in a set were executed. Here are the values recorded after running set A10, where I could easily spot core 5 as the weakest core, as it reached only 4825 MHz, although it had a -30 magnitude curve. Looking at the pairs of individual threads under core effective clocks, I identified core 3 as reaching best frequencies while having -24 magnitude curve. Therefore, I would try to push other cores in order to reach the performance objective. There is no magic recipe for Ryzen tuning, as there are no two processors alike. Also, some processors have more undervolting headroom than others. And remember, the cooling has an important role in overclocking, as the higher temperatures are a limiting factor. However, if you decide to enroll in such a journey, this is my advice for the 6-core Ryzen owners. Identify the 2 fastest cores, then find the stable curve for each. Next, assign to both the less stressful value, or one step lower. Identify the weakest core and assign the most stressful but stable negative curve. Try all combinations for the remaining three cores until you achieve best overall results. The strategy presented in this video should be applicable to all the Ryzen 5000 family of processors. As always, a big thank you for watching. Also, special thanks to all the subscribers of this channel for the granted trust. See you on the next material. God help! From 4.5 from 4.5 from 4.65 GHz to 4.85 GHz.